Hey, this is Marek from Tryb Solo. Today I'd like to talk about a game called The Hunters 1492. This is a game that will be crowdfunded on GameFound. I have received a prototype copy from the publisher Officina Monstrorum, so thanks for sending the game for review, and or a preview, should I say. This game is a, you can say, sequel and continues the ideas and gameplay style of another game, previous game from this publisher called The Hunters 2114. The first one was a sci-fi game that took place in the future, and this one is set in medieval times. And the story here is that in the year 1471, a strange mist appeared in the world, in these different regions, and you can say it swallowed lands and countries and people. In the mist were hidden some strange, dangerous creatures, monsters and everything. The only safe place was places of pagan and forgotten cults and beliefs and religions, so people gathered there. People formed new societies and new settlements, and you play as hunters, brave heroes who travel through the mist and offer their services for money. This is a fantasy game, an adventure type of game, story-driven game. You will have a campaign with a lot of different quests and missions that you will try to complete and try to fulfill. This is a prototype, as I said earlier, so everything that you will see in this video will probably change. This is just a small part of the whole game. I have a few quests and 3 heroes, some cards. Everything else will be, created later, probably after the campaign will be funded. But for now, I would like to show you how the game plays. If you have played the previous game, the futuristic edition of The Hunters, a lot of things will be familiar to you because the game continues on the ideas and gameplay mechanic from the previous game, but also changes a few things. So let me show you how the game plays, and then I will tell you what I think about this prototype and this game overall. Here you can see The Hunters 1492 during a 2-player or solo game where you have 2 different characters. The whole game is divided into 2 parts. The first part of the game is the, you can say, storytelling part of the game, where you will move your hunters around the map. You will discover new events, new locations. You will be able to upgrade your wagon. You will be able to upgrade your characters, craft new equipment, visit different towns. And the second part of the game is the quest part of the game, where you will use your miniatures to fight different enemies on a more tactical map, where you have some terrain and your miniatures, your action cards, and you will have a more tactical combat game. The main area here is bigger in the game. I had to remove a few cards so it will fit in my camera. But basically you have different cards that are connected together. They represent the world the action of the game takes place in. And you have your Hunters token. This is of course a prototype. In the final game everything will look different. So you have your Hunters token, and you will move this token around this card. They have this misty side, and it means this is a location that was not discovered during your game, but when you move to this card you will flip it and you can see some cool artwork on the back. Different cards, they have different numbers on the back. Of course, this M12, for example, means that this is card number 12. Sometimes the game tells you to place different quest cards on the location cards, but also you can see some Roman numbers. Here you can see it's 3, you have 1 and 2, and this means how dangerous the location is. So if you will move here, this location is quite dangerous, and you will have to draw road events. The road events are some story events, some things will happen, you will have some choices. So the more dangerous location, the more potentially dangerous the event card will be. So if you move your token from one location to another, you will roll a die. You have a die that has 3 sides with a dot and 3 blank sides. If you roll a dot, it means that you have to resolve a road event, and you will have to take a road event of the corresponding threat level of the location you moved to, and you will have to read it. You have some story, you have some options, some choices that you have to take, like A and B, and depending on your choice on the other side of this card, you have some, effects. Sometimes good things will happen, sometimes bad things will happen, but you have some road events that you will encounter during the game. Moving around the map is important because you have to discover new locations, new cities that you will be able to visit in order to heal, to buy different items, but also you have to move to different locations to continue with the story, to complete different quests and different tasks. So moving is quite important. Also, moving from one location to another means that you have to progress the day tracker by 1. On this wagon board you have the day tracker, and you have 60 days to finish the whole story of this game. So you have to be careful, you have to carefully move around, so you will not waste too many days. Apart from this map, the locations here, you also have your wagon board. This is like your headquarters, where you will be able to store different items, store some weapons that you will find. You will be able to upgrade this wagon, because this is also a place where you will be able to craft different items. And depending on the level of different parts of your wagon, you will be able to craft and create new items. There is a whole, let me show you, crafting equipment sheet, and you have all the items that you will be able to create. During the game you will be able to find different resources, like you have materials and you have plants and trophies, and finding different resources will allow you to craft different weapons and additions, helmets, shields and stuff like this. But you also have to improve, upgrade your wagon, so it will be able to craft these different items. So you have the map, you have your wagon, and you have also your heroes. Hero board is divided into 2 parts. The first part of the hero board is the part where you have different attributes. You have strength, knowledge, perception, agility and vitality. Strength is crucial when you fight. Knowledge is important when you use magic. Agility is important where you use ranged weapons. Vitality tells you what is your maximum health level in the game, and perception is important when you fight in combat, because it dictates the initiative of you and your opponents. The higher perception, the faster you will act during the combat. You also have a morale track. Morale allows you to sometimes to enhance test results to your favor, or you will be able to rise strength and knowledge and agility for one combat test, for example, or you can spend morale points to move further during your turn. You will gain morale during different quests as a quest reward. Apart from this character sheet here, you also have your the player board contains this element, this part here, and this is a place where you will place different equipment and different armor, shields, weapons that you will find during the game. You have different slots here. Each slot shows which type of equipment you can place here, and as you can see, it is limited, because sometimes you have weapons that are bigger. For example, if you find a sword like this, it will take 3 spots on your equipment board. and this, for example, this sling takes only one spot here. Some parts of the of this equipment board are locked, like here, and this, for example, means that if you pay 20 experience points during the game, you can unlock this slot. You can unlock this slot as well. Also, spending experience points allows you to, of course, raise your attributes. Every attribute track shows you how many experience points you have to spend to raise the corresponding attribute. Each character, apart from the player board, each character has got a deck of action cards, combat cards. You have 20 starting combat cards, and these cards will be used during the combat. But I will talk about combat a little later. What else do we have here? We also have cities, like cities cards. So when you discover different cities on the board, you have additional locations here. So this is like a more detailed city, like for example Pennsburg here, and you can visit different shops and different parts of the city to, for example, buy some armor, buy some weapons, executioners in, for example, medic, where you can heal, market, where you can buy different resources. So one way to get new equipment and new stuff is to craft it, but another way is to visit different cities in order to buy the equipment you want for money, so you don't have to craft it. And you have different equipment, different weapons, like armors and everything, and sometimes you can see like this, that you have this special here elements of these weapons, and this means that you can attach some additional equipment to this weapon. They have different shapes, so different types of additional equipment can be attached. Sometimes it's more round, sometimes it's more like this triangles here, so you can enhance your weapons with some additional magic and equipment, and for example some, like you have say a shape shifter grease and monster grease, they will add additional effects to your weapons. When you move around cities from one location, from one city location to another one, you also have to resolve events, but this time you have this deck of town events, so they work a little similar to road events. When you move from one city location to another city location, you have to resolve a town event, of course, when you roll your event die. But moving around a specific city doesn't move forward your day tracker. So moving from one map location to another, you can say, costs 1 day, but moving around the city doesn't. What else do we have here? You have some special, cards like this. They are event cards, more like a story cards that you will unfold and discover during your game. They will give you additional, choices and characters that you will meet. You have different jobs. Sometimes a game will tell you to place a specific tasks on a location, like for example here we have 2 tasks, and if you go there you can do some additional quests. These are some like side quests. You have a story here, and on the other side it tells you what you have to do to start this quest, and a reward for completing the quests. Quests can give you additional reward, can give you money or some resources. In the final version of this game you will have 2 books. One is called Tome of Quests, and this will be like this is a prototype, so this is printed, but in the final version of this game you will have a book with different quests that you will be able to fulfill, to complete main quest and side quests. But you will also have a book called Tome of Tales, and this is something similar to, I don't know, if you played any campaign game with a storybook, like for example Tainted Grail or something. You will have a book with different sections and some cards, some events, some quests will tell you, for example, to read paragraph 101, and you will read it. You have some different choices. It will tell you what to do. So you will have a whole book of different story paragraphs, story text that you will read during the game, and they will tell you what to do. It's a clever idea, much better than putting all the text on cards. You can see already that you have a lot of story text on the cards, so adding even more text will make the card unreadable. So having a book of tales is quite a clever idea, and this is one of the changes from Hunters, the first Hunters game, the sci-fi one, because there you didn't have any tome of tales, you just had the quest cards and everything was written on the cards. So this is basically the storytelling part of the game, where you will move, you will visit different cities, you will upgrade your characters, you will craft or buy new weapons, do different events, different jobs, different event road cards and town cards, and you will progress your day tracker. But at some point you will have to do a quest. And to do a quest, you will move to another separate board. From the game found art and the game found information about this campaign for this game. I think that this will be another like a book, similar to Jaws of the Lion book, where you will open it and you will have a map of a specific location, and you will move your miniatures and characters on the map. So let me show you how it looks like. So here you can see the quest map. This is a quest map for the first scenario. We have some forest and we'll have some wolves here. We have our characters that will have to defeat the wolves in order to win the scenario. The tome of quests tells you what are the victory conditions. Let me show you. Each quest contains some introduction. You have deployment that tells you which map to use, which enemy cards to use, what is your goal, if there are some special rules, what happens when you win the scenario, and what happens when you defeat a scenario. You have to place your enemies. Right now they are represented by these tokens, but in the final game you will have miniatures, and you also have an enemy card. And this is a card of your enemy, wolf in this situation here. It tells you how much life points it have. You have the perception, so it will tell you how fast the wolf will act during combat initiative. You have some defense against melee attack, against range attack, and against magical attack. And you have the actions the wolf will try to do. You always have to resolve from top to bottom. So for example, the first action says that if the range is 0, so if the wolf is in the same space as our miniature, the wolf will use melee attack 2. I will tell you in a second what it means. If the range is higher, so it's not in the same spot as we, the wolf will try to move 2 locations to a target and then attack, or move 3 spots to the target and it will not attack. So depending where the wolf is located on the board, it will try to perform different action. So looking at the initiative, you have to check who acts first. For example, Wilhelm here, he has perception 0, so he will probably be the last character to perform his actions. And for example, Elena here, she's got perception 2, so the same as wolves. So you as the player can decide who will act first, Elena or the wolves. And during your action, I mean player action, you will have 5 cards in your hand, and you have your action card deck. You will choose 5 cards from this deck, and the rest card will be shuffled, and each combat round you will draw as many cards as to have always 5 cards in your hand. And during your turn, you can choose one of the actions, one of the cards, and perform actions written on them. Like for example here you can move or parting clip. Parting clip means that you can move away from your enemy, and then you can do melee attack 2. Here you can move by 2. Here you can move or melee attack 3. So different cards, they have different actions. Also some of the cards, all the cards have some additional effect at the bottom. Some can be used, like you can see reaction your turn, and here you can see reaction enemy turn. So we can use this additional card during your turn or during enemy turn. And for example, this card says add 1 additional die when performing a melee attack versus this specific type of enemy. Or you can, for example, add 1 die in any roll. And how a combat looks like. If you move, you can move to an adjacent spot on the quest map. You can move left, right, top, but also diagonally. And if you want to attack, you have to choose a weapon that you will use. For example, here we have this sword. And this sword has some attributes at the bottom. It tells you how many dice you will roll, how it will modify to hit attribute, and this is range of the weapon. So range 0, so it means that we will have to be in the same spot as the enemy. We will roll 3 dice. So here you have dice, d6, and you will roll them. And you have, if you use the cards, for example this, it tells melee attack 2, you have to roll the 3 dice, and on the dice you have to roll 2 or less, so 1 or 2. If for example you will use this card, you will roll the 3 dice, but success is on 3, 2 or 1. So for example, let's roll the cards. I have rolled 1, 3 and 6. So with using this, what was the card? For example, this card, melee attack 2, I had 1 success. And because I use my melee attack, I use the sword, I will add my strength to the number of successes. Because Wilhelm has got 2 strength, so I will add 2 to my 1 success. So I was able to do 3 hits to the enemy. Now I have to check the defense of the enemy. The wolf has got 0 defense against swords, against melee attack, so I will subtract 3 damage from the wolf. Because the wolf has got 3 health, he will be killed in this combat. So the combat is not very complicated. You have to roll the dice. You have to check how many successes you manage to have. And then you will add your strength if you fight with swords. You will add your agility if you fight with some ranged weapons like bows, for example. And you will add knowledge to the number of successes if you fight with some magical attacks. And it works similar with the enemy. The enemy also has got, each enemy card has got the number of dice that you have to roll for the enemy, and like here melee attack 2, it tells you that when you roll 2 dice, you will have to have 1 or 2 to be able to successfully hit the hero character. And this is how combat basically looks like. But the whole tactical part of the combat is in all these cards here, because you have different actions, but you have also these additional actions at the bottom, the reactions, and you can use each action that you perform during your combat. You can add 1 reaction card. So these reaction cards, they change really the way how you perform, the way you attack, because they add some bonuses. Sometimes you can use a reaction during enemy turn, so when the enemy attacks you. So it's really fun. Also during the game you will be able to buy additional cards, so it has some deck building elements, because you can get new cards. This is the cost here, how much experience points you have to pay, but you have a lot of additional cards that you will be able to add to your deck. The thing is that you always need to have 20 cards in your combat deck, so when you add some new cards, you have to remove some other cards from the deck. But you will be able to customize your combat deck to your style of playing. If you are like a sorcerer or a, you know, hunter, ranger, or maybe a fighter, you can add the cards that you want to have in order to suit your play style. As for the enemies, you also have some, you know, more advanced enemies, like for example this Megaloptera. It has some range attacks and melee attacks. It will add some additional effects because you have a lot of effects in this game, like, you know, poison and stuff like this. This is also quite a basic location, but some of the locations, they have special spots where you can fortify, or special spots where you can hide. So the later quests in this game become more tactical. You can also use the terrain to your favor, but also the enemies will do the same. They will hide somewhere. You will be have more problems to hit them, and the enemies also will be more difficult than just when the wolves. Like for example, this enemy here has got 2 defense against melee attacks, some additional, you know, 2 types of combat and stuff like this. So this is the quest part. After you also have a round tracker at the top. Sometimes you have to survive a specific number of rounds. When the quest ends with you victorious or defeated, you will read the corresponding part in the tome of quests, and the story will, you know, continue. Some things will happen depending if you have won or lost a specific scenario. So this is basically how you play this game. So let's go to the summary. The basic question here is if you have played the Hunters 2114 and if you liked it. So, if you have played the previous Hunters game and you didn't like it, you will probably don't like this version, this edition as well, because it's very similar in terms of gameplay. Of course, it tells a different story, it's set in different times, and you don't have any machines, you have monsters here, and, you know, swords and bows and arrows and everything. So it's set in a fantasy medieval times, but in general the whole gameplay style is very similar. You will travel across the land, you will visit different cities, you will perform different quests, different tasks, you will have some events, you will upgrade your characters, buy and craft different equipment, and then you will go on missions, and the missions will be played on this tactical map where you will fight different monsters and enemies. And it's quite similar to the Hunters 2114. There are some changes here because you have this wagon here instead of the headquarters, and it travels with you, so you don't have to go back to your headquarters as in the previous game. Crafting is much easier here because you don't have to wait for the items to be produced. You just have to spend your resources, and you need to have your wagon upgraded, but you just spend everything and you instantly gain the created weapon or armor or piece of equipment, so it's much easier. They have also replaced a lot of cards, I think, with this book of stories, the storybook, where you have different paragraphs and different sections that you will have to read during different, you know, quests and missions. So instead of having all the text written on cards, you have this storybook that you will be able to read. I think that the tiles will be replaced by this, how do you say, map book, a big book of different locations and maps that you will open and play on them, just like in Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Sorry if I'm mistaken, I have seen some images on the GameFound pre-launch site, and it shows a huge book with different maps. If that's the case, I'm quite happy because it speeds up the game a lot. You don't have to search for specific tiles, you just open the book and you have a area ready for combat. Combat is a little similar, but also a little streamlined because you don't use any defense dice. Each enemy has got a specific defense value, and you just subtract it from the hit points that you that you cost to that you rolled. So it's easier, you don't have to roll any defense die. But in general, it feels very familiar. So on the other hand, if you have played the Hunters 2114 and you love this game, you love this storytelling style, the gameplay, your characters, how you can level up, how you can add new equipment and modify the equipment you already have, all the combat elements, the tactical maps, different terrain types and action cards, reactions on the cards. If you loved all of it, I think you will love the Hunters 1492, because it's really great, unless of course you don't like fantasy theme. But if you like fantasy games and you liked the previous game, you will also like this game as well. And if you haven't played the previous game, this is a great storytelling campaign adventure game. I really like that the game is divided into two different parts, because you have this story part of the game where you will travel through different locations and do different quests, and you have a lot of events and different types of cards, town events, road events. You will uncover the areas, you will find different cities, you will visit the cities. You had a lot of things that you can craft and buy, and a lot of quests, different enemies. This is really great. The option to level up your character, you can adjust the attributes, you can unlock new slots in your equipment area. This is really cool. But I also like the whole tactical part of the game, because you have your miniatures, you have your enemies, you will fight on the board, and it's much more tactical than in a lot of adventure, dungeon crawler type of games. It feels more like a battle system, where you have skirmish system, where you have your miniatures, you have a specific map, you have different types of terrain, you have to attack, you have action cards that you can use for different attacks. It's really, on one hand, it's not complicated in terms of rules, but on the other hand, it's really satisfying in terms of gameplay and options you have. I have to say, I'm really happy that this game is set in fantasy times. I'm a huge fantasy fan. I like the previous Hunters game, it was great, but I'm more fantasy guy than a sci-fi, so I really liked it. Of course, the theme, the overall theme and story is not. I haven't played the whole game. This is just a prototype. I have seen a small part of the whole game. Maybe it's not the whole story is not that unique. You have a mist, and there are some monsters in the mist, and people are scared and afraid of it. But it plays really well. The whole mist mechanism, when you uncover different sections of the map, is really cool. So I really like the Hunters. Are there many disadvantages of this game? I can only think of one. It's a prototype, so it's hard for me to judge the full product. If Officina Monstrorum sends me the final product when it will be released in the future, I can tell you more about the whole game. But seeing this prototype, the only disadvantage I can think of is that this game is huge. It's a huge table hog, and you need a huge table to play this game. And even though some things were streamlined from the previous Hunters game, I think this game takes even more table space than the previous one, because you have this whole map area. And you still have some cards that you have to lay on the table with different locations, like different cities, and the cities, they have different sections that you can visit. But you also have this whole map where you move around your group of hunters, where you uncover different locations. You have this storybook, the quest book, the tome of quests, the tome of stories. You will have a huge tactical map for your combat. So this game needs a big table, and you cannot really remove some parts of the game from the table during the gameplay. It's not like, because the combat, the missions, the quests, they are not very long. you can play one combat section of this game in probably 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then you have to go back to the other part of the game where you move around the map. So you need both elements of the game somewhere on your table. You will have probably some miniatures and dice and cards and everything. So this is a huge game that requires a huge table. It's not a disadvantage for me. I like huge games. The bigger the game, the more happy I am, because if you have probably seen some videos on my YouTube channel, I really like to play huge, epic, fantasy, you know, storytelling, campaign-driven games. So I have a huge table. This table is like 2 meters wide and 1 meter long. So it's a big table and everything fits here. But if you have a small coffee table, I'm not sure if you will be able to play the Hunters A.D. 1492. But apart from that, from what I have seen here, it will be a really great story-driven fantasy game with unique combat, action cards, crafting and adventures and everything. So if you like this type of games, you should definitely check the Game Found campaign. Link to the campaign will be in the description of this video. And if you like this video, click the like button, subscribe to my channel to see even more videos of huge adventure games. And you can visit me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. Links are also in the description of this video. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.